the kidneys. So this is our positioning and where it's found, retroperitoneal. If we were to take a cross section, basically cut and look down, this is the view that we get. So we do see that there is some protection, have a little bit of the rib cage protecting them, but a lot of that kidney is still exposed and open for trauma and damage, and basically just because of their position. Now, as we look at their structure, we're going to see that we have this structure that's very C-shaped. All right? When we begin to look at the tissues that make it up, we call it renal parenchyma. It's all of this stuff that we're seeing in the kidneys. I got two. I only need one. Open them up. Yeah, open them up and look at them. Okay, if we open this up and if we look at this C shape that exists, okay, there's an area called the renal sinus. Remember the definition of sinus? Okay. This is where we've got our blood supply, lymph vessels, nerves, ureters. And the ones that are being represented on ours are the blood and the ureter. Okay. Yeah, I don't really see the lymph and the nerves. Okay. So they're representing our blood supply and then the ureter. So this would be the area of that renal sinus. All right. Now, as we look at this parenchyma that is surrounding it in this C shape, it's got two zones. Can you kind of tell the difference in the shading that they use? Like this outer part of the C looks like it's more pink or more red than this little inner portion of it. Okay, they're trying to show a representation of that. But if we look at this, all right, the two zones that are existing in this C structure, we're going to have the cortex and the medulla. The cortex is always to the outside. The medulla is always to the inside. So in the structure that we've got, see how it looks like we've got these little red structures right here? Okay, just to the outside of that portion is the cortex. This inner portion, the medulla. Is everybody with me? The renal cortex contains renal columns. Probably easier identified on this little half section. What do you think of when you hear the term column? You think of a tall column. Do you see how it projects down in between each of these little red areas? That's your column. This projecting downward, okay, divides this medulla portion into 6 to 10 pyramids. Each one of these red lined areas is representing a pyramid. So each one of those little red lined areas, because they're shaped like a pyramid. Okay? So we've got our cortex, we've got the medulla. Yes, no, maybe. Pictures are just horrible today. So we've got our fibrous capsule that will surround it, and then all of the other structures on the outside of that. We've got our cortex, which sort of goes on the outside of these pyramids. The columns extend in between, and then the pyramids are these darker red looking structures. Anywhere from 6 to 10 exist in one kidney. All right?
Does that just mean you're murdered? Or is it?
Not necessarily.
You're missing maybe?
Not really missing. It's just the makeup.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just the makeup. No true right or wrong.
Okay. And know that directly affected function.
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Not necessarily. Renal sinus, showing the ureter, blah, 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 for the structure that we see. In this parenchyma, in this C-shaped tissue that's being referred to, okay, the pyramids, yes, they're shaped like that, they're termed that because they look like a pyramid. But note that the tip of each pyramid moves towards the sinus. Okay, is everybody following me? When we say a lobe of the kidney, a lobe of the kidney is a pyramid and it's overlying cortex. So you would have that pyramid doing like this, and this would be considered one lobe. That's the second time I've been dropped that poor little kidney. We're going to find in this, which they try to represent it. Okay, they do. You got to give them kudos for that. A renal papilla. Huh? What? Okay. Now, the area that's going to begin to collect urine. Look at your kidneys. Yeah, they're representing it either on this side or the other side. But do you see, for example, at the tip of one of these pyramids, the yellow, that's supposed to be the urine. They're trying to represent urine that way. Okay? So, the papilla, we're going to find that there is a minor calyx, major calyx, renal pelvis to the ureter. As we look at this structure, what happens? I need a bigger kidney. All right. If I've got the pyramid, as it drains to where the yellow portion is, the first draining comes from the minor. That'll go into the major, which is kind of what they're trying to show with all the yellow, okay? Which will move into my renal pelvis, which would be like right there at the tip, okay? And then that's going into my pelvis area, leading to my ureter, where it's going to exit. So this whole little sinus this renal sinus area, because remember, a sinus is like a depression, like an empty cavity, okay? Think of all of these little papillas going into their calyx, and all of those leading to this sinus to make it to the ureter to go to the bladder. Okay, everybody with me? So, if I've got my pyramid, okay, here they're trying to show this little area at the tip, okay, little areas at the tips, okay. They're showing that at the very first portion, you're going to have your minor, you're going to go into your major, you're going to go into the sinus area, which is going to lead to the ureter, which is going to go to the bladder. So my urine production, that's the way that we're getting the flow for it. Okay? Everybody follow me? But I gotta get to my urine production. How do I do that?
Water.
Well, water can help, but for my kidneys to take my blood is how it's going to produce urine. Look at your blood supply. That is, I don't know about y'all, a huge artery coming into my kidney. And that huge artery, because where is that artery branching from? My aorta. And how close is that to my heart? Very close. Not only that, look at that artery branching that it's going to start to take, and it's got to get into something very, 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 very small. Trust me on that. And it's got to take that blood that's coming off of the aorta, 120/80, okay? Not far from where that 120/80 is. The pressure going into that kidneys is high, and it's receiving about over a liter of blood per minute. That kidney is receiving over a liter of blood per minute.
Is that per kidney or
Per kidney.
Okay, that's okay.
Think about that for a second. Do you go to the bathroom that much?
No.
Nope. If we did, that's pretty much where we'd be all the time. You'd just be going, you'd just be sitting or standing. The arterial supply to the kidney, our renal artery, ta-da, okay? Renal artery is this great big huge one. Now here's the way that it's going to basically branch, 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 all right? It'll go into a segmental artery, an interlobar artery, and a curate artery, to a cortical, to an afferent arteriole. This supplies one nephron. The nephron, which they're trying to represent on ours as these little squiggly white lines, are microscopic. You have roughly 1 million per kidney. That is how microscopic they are. And they're receiving that per minute. Anybody else's mind blown? Like I said, I understand it, I can't comprehend it. Okay? This functional unit has what's termed a glomerulus. You gotta love that term. Okay? Basically, seriously, a ball of capillaries where this leads to. The efferent is, as that blood enters that ball of capillaries, it's got to go out. Okay? So there's an efferent arteriole. The exit of the blood is from the efferent to peritubular capillaries to cortical veins, arcuate veins, interlobar veins, back to our renal vein. The little white squiggly lines. We got to get the blood to it, out of it, and back out. That's what it's going to do. We're going to find that there's a network of vessels around these little squiggly white lines. That network of vessels around it is going to be a vasa recta. They descend into the medulla. Their job, help with maintaining the concentration gradient of that medulla. That is what we just talked about. Basically, blood supply to one nephron back to the heart. Think about that. See you on Tuesday.